All right, you checking in with Mike Williams from the LA Chargers, and you're tuning in to Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Wolkenstein here with you from the LA Football Network. If this is your first time tuning in the show, make sure to hit that like, subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Dan Wolkenstein, the 2025 NFL Draft officially in the books. An exciting 3 days for Chargers fans everywhere. We got a lot to get into as it relates to the comprehensive haul that the Chargers came away with at the end of 7 rounds. Dan Wolkenstein, we got a chance to talk last week, shortly after the Omarion Hampton pick. But we got a lot more as it relates to the rest of the players that ended up getting drafted before that. Dan Wolkenstein, how are you? You and I were basically shoulder to shoulder as it relates to this NFL draft. It was 3 days of excitement, 3 days of football, a little bit of debauchery sprinkled in as well, along with many, many, many libations. It was fun. It was a fun weekend.
Super fun. Thank you again for the hospitality and libations and memories and pictures that I have saved on my phone for eternity. That was so much fun. Chargers fans, Chargers got better. The Chargers got better. I call it targeted missile strikes, if you will. This Chargers team told us who they were. And there might be some things that were maybe somewhat confusing in terms of what was prioritized. But in the end, Justin Herbert was prioritized. This Chargers franchise went BPA again for the most part. And I think Chargers fans should be happy. This was a pretty darn good draft. Like, was it 100% A+ out of the park? In my opinion, no, but it didn't have to be. Would it have been great? Sure. But right off the top, I give this one a solid B+. And we'll get into it here, Jake. I thought it was a strategic draft. I thought this Chargers team did what they sought out to do, and I'm excited to get into it, man. Chargers draft class plus UDFAs. We'll get into all of it. We'll go into what we believe were the best picks, grades, and all these guys. But Jake, I was feeling fantastic by the end of day 3. How are you feeling? How are you?
I had to get some, I had to refuel for day 3. That was for sure.
Chargers Unleashed is brought to you by Liquid IV.
Man, do I wish I had one of those on the morning of day 3. That is for sure. No, it was a hell of a week. This is 40. It was a great way to have a birthday celebration when your birthday happens to fall on draft weekend, and in this particular case, night 1. And it was a hell of a birthday celebration to see Omarion and Hampton get drafted in the days that followed. It was just a hell of a birthday weekend in general. For the Chargers, as Dan said, they have been trying to explain to us what they were going to be doing. And I think for the most part, with a BPA formula that they stuck to pretty well, they were able to do that. And on top of what they said at the end of the season press conference, both Harbaugh and Hortiz alike said that they failed Justin Herbert in terms of getting him more support. I think you can pretty much say that in this draft, mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. And like Dan, we are both in agreement as us giving our grades for this particular draft a B+, because there were some areas that, questions were thrown out, especially in the later rounds of the draft, that you felt like there may have been some more positional value, different directions that the Chargers could have gone, and we'll get into that as we go down the individuals overview of each one of these players here. But for the most part, Dan, I thought it was an exciting 3 days. I thought the Chargers came away still building out depth for their team, still getting starters, and coming away with weapons for Justin Herbert. So many goals, and in different formats and different ways, given how the board fell to them. They did what they needed to do.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Let's go through. So I guess stage setting, we'll go through kind of the individual players selected. We'll give our kind of brief overview of these guys, what we think of them, and then we can kind of get into the macros and the micros with how this kind of fits into this Chargers team. Jim, we talked about Omarion and Hampton before. I think we talked about how important this was for this Chargers team, and I think we're pretty much in alignment on this one. I think this is a much needed selection for this Chargers team. I think relieves a ton of pressure on not only the offensive line, but also the weapons and Justin Herbert. as well. He kind of helps this Chargers team in a multitude of ways. Pass catching, blocking for Justin Herbert. Clearly, running game gives him explosiveness, physicality, speed, dynamicness that this Chargers team just hasn't had since probably Melvin Gordon. Round 2, though, Chargers go and I think excite a lot of Chargers fans and go get Tre Harris. Jake, this is one of your guys. I'll give you the floor. Round 2, number 55, Tre Harris incoming.
Talk about elation for Tre Harris when we were talking about it on the pod after day 1 and we were talking about possible day 2 targets. I had explained to everyone on the pod that on April 29th of last year, the day after the 2024 NFL draft concluded, I had sent Dan a text message because I already started getting into the weeds for the prospects for the following year. And I told Dan, I said, I wanted to be as educated as possible, get as much information as I can. You know, I'm starting summer scouting early, whatever it is you want to call it. And as I was going through, I started with the wide receiver class. And I had texted Dan a couple of different players, one in particular for him because I thought it was going to be one of his personal favorites, another one of his Tank Dell comparators and that. But what followed was I said, okay, the one person I am pounding the table for next year, Tre Harris at Ole Miss. And Dan, of course, responded to me with, you are a sick individual for getting into the weeds this early. But the way that the season started for Tre Harris, Dan, if it was not for him suffering injuries middle of the season, he was having the best start to any wide receiver in terms of production in all of FBS. And it would be interesting to see if that injury hadn't have happened, where we would have been talking about Tre Harris in the overall rankings of everything. But in terms of your X receiver that we have talked about so much that the Chargers were searching for, you've got it. In terms of your big-bodied wide receiver that can do more than just run go routes and run past everybody, Tre Harris could do a lot more than that. It's his contested catch rate, Dan, that was a big highlight for what it is that he does, especially when you kind of look at what the 2024 season for the Chargers, everybody outside of Ladd McConkey in terms of the wide receivers was missing. There were a lot of elements, and Tre Harris fills the gaps on a lot of those elements that they were missing offensively. So I specifically was elated for the pick, obviously. I think it fits exactly what Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman are going to be looking for to give Justin Herbert support in this offense. So hell of a pick by the Chargers. I didn't think that he was going to be there by 55. He was. They pulled the trigger. They got their guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think he plays bigger than 6'2", 205, in my opinion, but I think he's got the juice, dude. I think he's a physical player. I think he has really underrated footwork, honestly. Contested catch, you mentioned 61.5% contested catch rate this past year, 89.4 receiving grade according to PFF, 5.12 yards per route run, which is absolutely insane. And I think the part that I enjoyed the most about his potential, we talk about being able to win one-on-one man coverage. Jacob's grade versus man coverage, 95, like the elite of the elite. This Chargers team has gotten so much better on the boundary with Tre Harris. And you look at the combination of him plus Mike Williams, and we'll talk about another receiver drafted. They're pretty well-rounded. Like you talk about a basketball team, like they've got all 5 positions. So Tre Harris was a huge one, and I think was a relief to a lot of Chargers fans. I mean, I think we can say A+. I'm going to give it an A because maybe there's a guy that fell from round 1. I don't know, but this is a damn good selection. And Chargers fans, Chargers get weapons for Justin day 1, day 2. And we went into day 2 thinking defensive line somehow and pass catcher for Justin. Come out of it with that, you're golden. Chargers go wide receiver Tre Harris at round 2, pick number 55. Then they go to Oregon for the trenches, and they go get Jamaree Caldwell at round 3, pick 86. This is a fun one, and you had to kind of reel back the tape to 2 years of a window for you to see why exactly this Chargers team went after Jamaree Caldwell. Well-rounded. The guy's a production machine 2023 when he was more of a pass rusher, more of a run stopper in 2024. And Jamaree Caldwell, you could tell, was a very big priority for this Chargers team when they were watching Derek Harmon, and you kept seeing the nose tackle in Oregon. Jamaree Caldwell, Jake, again, targeted missile strike. We saw Poona Ford leave. They went after a few folks in free agency, but they needed more beef in the interior, and they got someone here. And you like a guy that has the dancing bear traits, right? Quick feet, big, physical, can move folks, but could also be an anchor. Jamaree Caldwell fits that with also being able to rush the quarterback. Jake, what are your thoughts on Jamaree Caldwell?
Yeah, Dan, you talk about moving folks, but at 342, he can just also flat out move himself. There was a question, I remember seeing this on Twitter, because there was a lot of Benjamin Solak hype from the Trey Harris pick, and he liked the first 3 picks that the Chargers came out with. But prior to the draft, he had said, someone had asked him who his best sleeper pick was. And he had said prior to everything kicking off for I think it was either day 2 or round 3, whatever it was, he had said Jamaree Caldwell. And I think he fits what this team needs. It's definitely giving them some of their pass rush juice that they're missing with the current veterans that they have on the roster. So as you had mentioned, the Poona Ford replacement with those aspects that he brings to the game. Jim Harbaugh had talked about him a lot in terms of where they could put him along the line in terms of if we need to, have him come in as a 1 technique, as a 4 technique, wherever it is that we need to have him, he's going to be able to come in and produce. So I think he's a versatile chess piece along that defensive line that you didn't currently have prior to the draft. And, he kind of took a back seat to Derek Harmon at Oregon and everybody talking about him. But in terms of what it is that he brings to the table, still a lot of those traits and attributes as it relates to pass rushing capability. And for a guy his size that can move people like that, that's a rarity for someone at that position.
Yeah, I think it's pretty remarkable. And again, like we talk about like who this Chargers team is and sticking true to the R. We talk about BPA. We talk about the importance of production. You go look at Omarion Hampton's statistics, like proven production. Go watch Trey Harris, proven production. Jamaree Caldwell over a 2-year gap, proven production at both pass rusher and run stopper. Go through the list, and then you get to round 4, same thing. Round 5, BPA, same thing. So it's a theme that you see. And so Chargers fans, I think sometimes maybe a little bit like, well, what about offensive line? Which, again, there is fair criticism to be had. If you think about production, BPA, and fit for this Chargers team, I mean, they're pretty on brand. And the fun part was listening to kind of the post-draft pressers, whether it was Jim Harbaugh, Joe Hortiz, Chad Alexander. Like you could tell like there were some players where they were kind of sweating to see if these guys would be available. They had to kind of wait, hope, pray. Sometimes there were deals that maybe were in the works and then stopped last minute, i.e. Eagles round 1, or there were deals where they're thinking about trading up or down, not doing it. They traded up for a tight end later on the draft, which I love. But this Chargers team, like you kind of went through it, right? Like Chargers fans are going through those emotions as this draft plays out. The draft room was too. And so Spanos actually helped out. I think they talked about specifically. There were times where Hortiz and Harbaugh were wanting to possibly trade up, and there's kind of the calmer heads in the room saying to just like chill. And some guys stay, some guys go, some guys get picked out right from under your nose. But at the end of the day, you like your guys, you like your board, and the Chargers team kind of stayed with it up to round 3, then get to round 4.
I'm glad you brought that up, Dan, because I firmly believe that with Derek Harmon right there before Pittsburgh ended up selecting him, that was going to be the selection for the Chargers. And I'm not discounting the Omarion Hampton pick because I think that they worked the board perfectly given how it fell to them with 4 defensive tackles going off the board, the 2 top tight ends going off the board. Omarion Hampton in terms of BPA was the right way to go. But I think that is why, especially hearing the report this morning from Ian Rappaport on the Pat McAfee show talking about that potential trade with the Eagles, because the Eagles wanted to come up for Jihad Campbell. Still ended up getting them 7 picks later whenever they traded up for it. But I personally think that whatever reason why that trade back did not end up coming to fruition, if the Chargers were still targeting Hampton and they thought that they couldn't get him if they traded back to 32, if there was somebody else that they felt was going to leapfrog them, if they ultimately ended up trading back for a player that they wanted, who knows? But cooler heads ended up prevailing, and ultimately the Chargers left rounds 1, 2, and 3 with great impact players at huge positions of need.
Yeah, so the Chargers team goes round 4 afterwards and targets defensive line. They go get Kyle Kennard out of South Carolina, round 4, pick 125. Jake, I think this is a guy you were very high on. And so Chargers fans get a dude with instant production again. Let's talk about Kyle Kennard.
Yeah, how about the SEC Defensive Player of the Year still being on the board in round 4? Not too shabby for the Chargers to pick up. This was definitely a position of need because beyond this year, Khalil Mack is not going to be on the roster. Bud Dupree most likely is not going to be on the roster. And edge was kind of the sneaky position priority that people were even talking to really leading up to the draft that, hey, is this going to be possible for them at 22 overall? Yeah. And I think that this was a great move for them because not only did you need to add a little bit more speed and power combination with what you already have from Thule and Mack, but I think that this is their switch to getting younger at that role. I think Kyle Kennard he's not going to come in to be the starter over Thule or Mack, but in terms of someone, if you're going to say, this is where we're going to have you start as third down, go after the quarterback and get work done, that's him. He can do that. Is he possibly the heir apparent once Khalil Mack is gone? It's a possibility. But I thought in terms of adding more juice to that position, I love the selection of Kyle Kennard. Just in terms of South Carolina, in terms of what they had defensively was just ridiculous. But Kyle Kennard was one of the standouts of that unit. And in terms of just what you needed in that edge room, Kyle Kennard brings that to the table. It's a perfect fit for Jesse Minter, and we know how much that Jesse Minter loves getting after the quarterback. And Kyle Kennard has all of those aspects rolled into it in terms of what you want from a pass rusher.
And the D-line, again, you talk about well-rounded, right? Khalil Mack, you got Bud Dupree, you've got Thule. I think the Chargers team needed a little bit more juice, a little bit more speed. I talked about that as a big reason why I was thinking they could go edge in round 1 or round 2. And Kyle Kennard brings that. I think he fits this Chargers team specifically in terms of fit, in terms of it says fit twice, in terms of size, physicality, but I think more importantly, the whole at the juice that he brings to the Chargers on the defensive line. They can get younger. Khalil Mack's only going to be here for so long. And you got to get somebody in here that can assist and give you a little bit different flavor for this Chargers team. And again, he has juice he has power, clearly. He's also got some speed and some bend to get on the corner.
Yeah, don't worry about repeating yourself, Dan. I already know that I've done that a few times already on this show. So you're just fine.
So let's snap the line here. Chargers, round 1, running back. Round 2, receiver. Round 3 and 4, both defensive line. So 2 offense, 2 defense. And I don't think if you just stop there, zero surprise at the position groups they went after. There are some people that talked about maybe they go for tight end, maybe they go for a corner if one slips. There's a bunch of options. The offensive line was another one that people were thinking about. But offensive weapons and defensive line, like that's what Chargers fans were all talking about from the jump. And they went ahead and did it. So, it's one of those, like, we are who we thought they were, and we didn't let them off the hook. And so far, like, through round 4, I feel like Chargers fans are sitting pretty. We're feeling great about this. I don't think there's anything that folks were upset about at all. Would you agree? Like, I think here, if you ended it right now, rounds 1 through 4, easy, I would say at least A-.
Yeah. I think it may not have been in the particular order that people would have expected said positions to come off the board. But again, the Chargers stuck to their guns, let the board fall to them. And based on that, I thought they executed the BPA strategy extremely well. 5 defensive tackles ended up going in the first round. 4 were already gone by the time that they hit the Chargers in the first round. So you weren't going to make another reach given the other players that were going to go off the board, especially even for tight end. I've always kind of been thinking about that hypothetical that if they would have traded back to 32, would their pick, if it wasn't Omarion Hampton, been Mason Taylor maybe at that position? Who knows? We'll never know. But it's still, in terms of how everything's played out for the first round, it was great. In the second round, you already knew that the next 2 tight ends were already off the board. Ferguson, Taylor, thank you. And then some other D tackles had already come off the board. So the board didn't fall your way necessarily, maybe the way you wanted again in the second round. And yet you still come away with a terrific weapon that fits offensively for the Chargers perfectly. And then 3 and 4, once again, board falls in a similar way to you. And you still go BPA and you still address positions of needs with getting 2 great selections defensively.
Yeah. And again, like I'll put a bow on Kyle Kennard, but again, we talk about proven production, right? 11.5 sacks this past year, started all 12 games. Talk about TED Talks, right? Like they're every day. All of these guys, like they are there every day and they aren't missing games. So this Chargers team like stuck with it. Kyle Kennard had 15 tackles for a loss, led all SEC, and ranked 8th in FBS, 11.5 sacks. Like, yeah, dude, like that's not a surprise. And I think people are probably surprised that he fell to round 4. And so I think
people were.
And so I think Chargers got value there. Then round 5, Jake. This is where things get interesting. So round 5, I think Chargers fans were all kind of thinking, all right, dude, here we go. Offensive line, let's rock and roll. Chargers fans can put a bow on it. They don't. Chargers decide to go more weapons for Justin Herbert, and they go out and get a receiver with some speed. It's got to help take the top off or leave more pressure underneath, Jake. Let's talk about round 5.
Yeah, this was kind of a surprise, given who was on the board at the time and where we all expected certain things to go. As you said, Dan, maybe addressing the trenches a little bit. Is it going to be an offense, defensive player? Well, it sure as hell was an offensive player, but I don't think that we expected the Chargers to double dip at wide receiver this high, even with the 5th round pick. But you go out and you get a guy who now has in KeAndre Lambert-Smith, who's got 4.3 speed, able to go downfield, make the contested catches, makes it look easy running by people. And Dan, if I'm being honest, this could be the direct competition for Quentin Johnston. If you look at the way that this roster is shaping out now, if you just look at your top 5 that you have, Trey Harris, Mike Williams, Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, KeAndre Lambert-Smith, you can add Darius Davis in there to kind of round it out as far as your top guys on the roster. But in terms of moving forward, we've talked about Mike Williams is most likely only going to be here on a 1-year deal. We still don't know what Quentin Johnston is going to be for this team. It was tried out last year for him to be the X option. It didn't work out so well. His best position in this roster is getting him out in open space where he can try to beat people with his speed. And that's seemingly what we have figured out over the first 2 seasons of his career is where it works. But I think KeAndre Lambert-Smith is going to give him a run for his money. And Dan, for a 5th round pick, when you have the head coach of the Chargers calling you and saying, you're going to get to find out what Justin Herbert's all about. And KeAndre Lambert-Smith's response is, I already know what Justin Herbert's about. He's going to find out what I'm all about. Okay.
You take it.
That's a hell of a way to go into offseason OTAs.
Totally. Fun fact, did you know that Cam Chancellor was his uncle? I didn't know that.
I didn't know that initially. I found that out. What was it? I think I found that out later on that day. Someone had messaged me that. I did not know about that.
Yep. But again, 2nd team all SEC. Talk about a TED Talk, right? He's there every day. I think he played all 12 games. 19.6 yards per reception. Like, that is bonkers. Give Chargers a receiver that can get 20 yards a clip. I'll take it. 8 touchdowns, almost 1,000 yards. Led his team with 50 receptions, And I don't disagree with you. I do think that he is a competition to Quentin Johnston, but maybe not for the reasons that other people might think. Like, I don't think he's the same archetype as Quentin Johnston. Like, Quentin Johnston is like for sure that Z that you want to have kind of doing those drag routes underneath, get him in space. This is it's just a different archetype of receiver. So I'm curious to see what they prioritize. This feels to me kind of like the Jalen Guyton type. If you go back to like 2020, 2021 kind of thing, where you saw them just take the top off with those posts, just going crazy, right? The bombs. That's where I could see him kind of getting there. Again, you mentioned the 4.37 speed. He's got some fun catches, dude. Like, he's got some really, really fun catches.
He's got some lost moments.
Yeah, and he's got hands. Both of these receivers, holy smokes. Go look at the touchdown that he's got in the end zone on the far sideline with like 2 feet in. It's insane. No one thinks he got it in except him and the sideline judge who says it's a touchdown. I like him. Now, was I surprised? Did I have him as a 5th round grade above other guys that were available? I didn't. I'll be honest. And I think the Chargers team saw him in a different perspective than I did. But this is one of those situations where choosing between blank or blank versus why not both? If I'm comparing him to a Trey Harris, clearly I'm going with Trey Harris for a specific reason. Well, many reasons, honestly. But if I'm looking at it like, hey, why not both? If I wanted to add a second receiver, who could I go? Yeah, 100%. This makes sense. Brings speed, elusiveness, downfield threat, relieves pressure for Justin Herbert. You'll take it. Now, the question is, would you rather have that or maybe some of the offensive linemen that were available? Because, and we'll get to that discussion here in a bit, but this team prioritizes a certain way. And I think what surprised me a little bit was you heard so much about this Chargers team talking about offensive line, how important it is, and tip of the spear and all that jazz. But then they go out and just get like pass catchers and offensive weapons galore, which again, like you're happy about, but you're just a little surprised. And so what that means, I think we'll get to in a little bit, but you talked about it. We've talked about it. We saw it for months. We saw it all year last year. Like Justin Herbert was playing with like 3-4 off suit all year. And so like they got to get him some face cards, man. Like, come on. They give him some speed. This Chargers receiving core is going to be nuts. I'm curious to see what that depth chart is going to look like because those comp battles are going to be crazy. Again, surprise. Not a bad pick. Surprised. I would give this one probably like B- for me. Again, I think in terms of like fit for the Chargers, sweet. What they could have done otherwise is probably where I had some questions. It's probably where a lot of Chargers fans have questions.
Dan, I'm going to take the reins here because there was another selection that was made in round 5. At that point, the Chargers had 4 second-round or 6th-round picks that we were all waiting on. Then it came up on the board that shortly after the Chargers made their selection of KeAndre Lambert-Smith, that Mitchell Evans went off the board. And then if you're paying attention to the ticker, you're like, wait, the Chargers are back up here in the next 3 picks. They went up like 20 picks. What the hell happened? So I messaged Dan. I said, I think we gave away 2 of our 6th-round picks. We're back up in the 5th round. We're going to be selecting here very shortly. And then the pick comes in. And I text Dan. Just a bunch of exclamation points saying one word. Gadsden. Dan Wolkenstein. Your personal favorite of the 2025 NFL Draft. Floor is yours.
Bros, I'm telling you, when I heard that it was Gadsden and that they traded up for Gadsden, I was like, instant euphoria. Jake had his moment of Trey Harris, and this was kind of my diamond in the rough coin phrase of 2025. And I talked about it on the tight end group or tight end episode when we went through our tight end rankings. And it was interesting because we were going through the Chargers draft selections and what I had as Chargers top 10 tight end fits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in succession. All of my guys in succession keep going, right? And when Mitchell Evans goes, I'm like, oh, here we go again. Next guy on my board was Orande Gadsden. But to me, he by far had the most upside in terms of just pure pass catching abilities. And you saw how quickly Chargers fans started to get pumped because, you know, so many of them didn't even know who that dude was. And then go Google him. And then 30 seconds later, like, oh my gosh, really? Wait, he can catch? Wait, he can run? Wait, oh, converted wide receiver? I'm like, told you. I've been sitting here screaming on the top of mountaintops for weeks. And finally, the Chargers go get the tight end. And in my opinion, like, this is a huge upside. And this was so exciting for me. It was just like my dude, right? Like, the guy played a ton. He had production galore. He had the most receptions. He had almost 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns, started all the games this past year, 500-yard receiving games this past year. A slot machine, 46 receptions out of the slot, second most in all of FBS for tight ends. Most yards, 583 out of the slot of all tight ends in FBS. Converted wide receiver to tight end. 60.7 contested catch rate, and that's at 28 times. He's 17 of 28. So huge sample size. I had him as an early day 3 grade. I can share my screen if you guys want. And the fact that they got this dude who has incredible hands, just 3 drops on 103 targets. Chargers fans have been sitting here for years talking about like all the drop issues and guys that don't have hands. And I get it, right? Go look at the hands of the dudes that they got this year. And filling a need in which they already got Tyler Conklin. Technically, they didn't have to do it. I wouldn't be shocked at all if this dude is the number one target by year end. Not at all. This is one of those guys where I'm like, yeah, whoever gets him, I'm going to be pissed. And then the Chargers got him. I was out of my mind excited.
Yeah, you talk about hands, Dan. I mean, his contested catch rate was fantastic this season. He had one of the best catches of anybody in the entire FBS season last year. You go back and you watch that game against Florida State, what he does when he comes down with the ball in the end zone. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, that type of a catch that he makes. So in terms of someone who's got hands that you want for a receiving threat, as Dan mentioned, the wide receiver convert to tight end, there is a great path for him given the lack of pass catching options for the Chargers, that OG could step in immediately and with a great chance to quickly become tight end one as it relates to a receiving threat. So you've got Conklin, you now have Gadsden, you have Disley and Fisk to round out that tight end group as your blockers for that position. I loved this selection, Dan. Honestly, I really did. I think that the Chargers got themselves an athletic monster with great hands that they have not had at that position in some time.
Again, production, right? Like this dude is proven. First team All ACC, third team All AP, All American, excuse me. School record for tight ends with 73 receptions this past year and 10.3 ADOT for a tight end. Like, and the part, honestly, Jake, that I felt the most, I don't know, joy in hearing was when at the post presser, when they were talking about the Gadsden pick, and you heard Hortiz and Harbaugh talk about how they were kind of sweating it out round after round that his name was still there. And when he had the phone call to Orande Gadsden, and he was telling him that like they made a big move to go up and get him. And the part that I found interesting was, I think it was Jim Harbaugh saying to him, quote, like, we've got a spot where you're going to help us immediately. And so you think of immediate production and immediate value for this Chargers team. Not to put the cart before the horse here, Jake, but looking at this draft class versus last draft class in totality, you're now seeing round 5. We saw what happened round 5 last year. Like, I think there's an argument to be made, and we'll talk about it a little bit, about which draft class will provide more instant value to winning football games. But this one, through the roof. This was huge to me in terms of value, in terms of fit, and huge sigh of relief, honestly, that the Chargers came away with a tight end that had that high of a ceiling, in my opinion, for pass catching. Because like that's what everybody was talking about. And Mitchell Evans, even if they got him, that was more of like a well-rounded type tight end. That was more of like a Hunter Henry type. That wasn't like an athletic dude. So this is kind of like the same archetype as a Ferguson, as a Loveland, to where like, yeah, go get it, man. And you saw how excited this Chargers team was when the trade went through, when they made the selection. Go watch that video of the call when it was made. This was one of the bigger reactions you saw from that war room. So tight end, round 5, 165. Again, trade up to get him. But now they kind of solidify the offensive weapons. Tight end, receiver, running back. And then go back to the free agency. You add Najee Harris. You add Mekhi Becton. You add Andre James. Like they went, I'm not going to say all in, but like they went pretty damn close with their chips to make sure that this shit that happened with Justin Herbert last year, like, isn't going to fly anymore. And I'm curious, like, what Justin's talking to Joe Hortiz about and Jim Harbaugh about afterwards. Like, is he sitting there like, oh my God, I love you? Is he like, oh, cool. Like, let's go cook some brisket. Let's go fishing. Like, what is Justin's reaction to this? Because like, finally, it feels like everyone is
I'm
like,
sure he's
here,
happy.
Justin, here's a brisket, $350, 12 hours. You're welcome. No, $250, 12 hours. You're welcome. Tastes good.
Oh, yeah. That's a good looking brisket if you just brought up the draft in that, if you just ended it after the Gadsden pick, that's still, at least Justin Herbert, is happy at that point.
Totally. And sidebar, well done on the brisket in the draft party.
Oh, Thank you.
Delish.
A 14-hour
you must have spent hours slaving over that. I mean, I can't imagine how much work that was for you. Like Jake is over here sweating for days trying to get that recipe right.
Jesus.
Round 6, number 199.
I pressed the button, dude. Okay. 14 hours later, thankfully, it came out good.
Euphoria for Chargers fans unite as they go out and select Pittsburgh's offensive line, Branson Taylor, in the 6th round. Tackle Branson Taylor. Maybe not. I think they see him as a guard. Joe Hortiz talked about it as much. So Chargers get competition in offensive line later than Chargers fans were expecting, and many were hoping. So what do you make of this? They finally get their offensive line competition. Will he be in competition for starting? And what do you make of the trade-off of essentially sacrificing offensive line for weapons for Justin Herbert?
Yeah, this is not any declaration on Branson Taylor. To answer your first question, do I think that he's going to be in any type of contention for starting snaps? No, I think that this is going to be strictly a depth move at this point in time. But I was surprised, and you kind of go back to rewind a little bit to the 5th round. There were players like Miles Frazier that, for whatever reason, was on the board for a long, long time. And couldn't explain it. I was trying to find out things for it, and I kept thinking to myself that every time that he was there, I was like, oh God, the Chargers are passing on him again. But he's still there in the next round. Like, this is some great value that you could potentially get for a guy who could become a future starter at that point. Didn't end up playing that way. Now, here's where a lot of the conversation around offensive line in general has come up, because we have listened to Joe Hortiz and Jim Harbaugh talk about offensive weapons being tip of the spear, prioritizing those positions, perceiving them differently and valuing them differently than other organizations out there. And going into this draft, we knew that there were still going to be some moves and priorities made for the Chargers offensive line. There had to be, because of how the organization perceives them. And whether or not we were reviewing that as a center, we had so many conversations about a Gray Zabel possibility for the 1st round. If that ended up coming to fruition, if that didn't end up coming, what would you be doing later? Would it have been a Jared Wilson? Would it be a Tate Ratledge? Didn't end up falling that way. So I think this is kind of where the biggest thing around the Branson Taylor pick is. Again, not indicative of his play, because I think his play mold fits nicely in terms of getting these guys that have more athletic and profiles and production overall. And for Branson Taylor, he was coming off of an injury in 2024. He didn't get a chance to participate at the combine, but he ended up participating later in the pro day. And I think it fits the mold of the type of athletic the offensive tackle, the offensive lineman profile that they are trying to build. So strictly right now, Branson Taylor is, I think, a nice depth piece, as it sounds. And hopefully the progress for him is going to be good to where it could go beyond that. We'll see. But I think that was where kind of the biggest question around the offensive line was in general, as it related to where the Chargers ended up prioritizing that position. And even at that spot, could they have gone a different direction? But great for Taylor coming to the Chargers. You knew the Chargers were going to select offensive line at some point, and they did here with the Taylor pick.
Yeah, and I'll address the elephant in the room. Do I think that he can be the answer at guard? And do I think the Chargers team has a hole at left guard? I don't know, honestly. I think that's kind of where the uneasiness is I don't know if it's solidified. And if you'd have gone some of these other players earlier in the rounds, you'd be like, all right, cool. Now we know. But again, they went and got Zion Johnson, 1st round pick. That didn't play out. So what makes you think of 5th, 4th, 3rd round offensive guard is going to play out? You don't know, right? So could this Chargers team go out and get another guard in free agency? Absolutely. I think there's 3 to 5 guys you can go out and get right now. And you'd be like, all right, sweet, prove it, done, check, next. They have a position battle between guard and center with a ton of dudes. Bozeman, Sawyer, Pipkins, now Taylor, Johnson, Andre James. Like, there's a ton of dudes there battling for 2 spots. It sounds, if it was me, if I had, Magic 8 Ball, I would guess it's going to be Andre James at center and either going to be a position battle or free agent at guard. And we'll see. We'll see. But that is the question mark, right? Like, that there isn't a period. That's a question mark. And I think that's what kind of left some folks a little sour on the draft. But again, like, dude, we're talking about a 6th round selection at this point. And so if you're feeling good about this, you could be, right? Like, this guy's a there everyday guy as well. He played 45 straight games for Pittsburgh before he got hurt last season. He played 12 games in 2021, played in 13 games in 2022, started all 11 games in 2023, and started his first 6 games in 2024 before he had a knee injury. Lance Zierlein had him projected as a round 5, round 6 that had girth and power for consideration at both tackle and guard. Jolt is a run blocker. Like, there's reason to be optimistic too. And the Chargers front office was optimistic about him. They liked him. They said they talked about him being a guard competition. So, like, there's reason to be optimistic. So I think there's 2 sides here, Jake. Like, some people are like, sky is falling. Chargers are basically screwed because they didn't fix their offensive line. And then there's the screw it, like, chuck it, run it, go. And I think the truth probably falls somewhere in the middle, as it always does. Justin gets more weapons. The offensive line is undoubtedly better than it was last year, regardless of what people say. And sure, if injuries happen, yeah, but that's for every position. If Joe Alt goes down, if Justin goes down, if Rashawn Slater goes down, like, that's the case no matter what. But it's, again, I think the biggest question is it is a question mark, which I think is why Chargers fans might be freaking out. But, like, okay, so you went from an A+ draft to, are you going to go all the way down to a B+ because of one position? Like, I don't think so. I don't know. I know I ranted a little bit there, but, like, we're talking about a round 5, round 6 selection here. But if the trade-off was you got a ton of weapons for your quarterback that you've all been asking for years, like, damned if you do, damned if you don't, it feels like.
Yeah. And I don't think that the work is done either at offensive line for them, especially after the draft. We had talked about, still reinforcing this, and albeit by this move for Taylor, the Chargers still just have question marks on what this offensive line is going to look like come training camp time. What's the combination going to be of your starting 5? I personally believe that Andre James is going to win out that job. You can't go back to what you saw from Bradley Bozeman. And the Zion Johnson talk about at the center position, I just don't see that panning out for someone making that type of position move. I still think that his best fit for him in the grand scheme of things is going to be at left guard. I think that this is really an opportunity just that Joe Hortiz and the organization is giving him to see how can you add a little bit more value to your overall skill set, because we don't even know if Zion Johnson's 5th round option is going to be picked up at this point in time. So you have to start planning for moves beyond this year, and we'll see what ends up coming of it. But offensive line work still not done, but I think we can all collectively say it's better than it was previously.
Yeah, we'll get into some of the macros here in a bit, but then Taylor's all his time. Ketchup is red, violets are blue. Joe Hortiz goes and drafts secondary.
Yeah.
Round 6, 214, Chargers select RJ Mickens out of Clemson. Round 7, I think it's Trikweze Bridges is how you pronounce it. Please
sounded good to me. I was going to allow you to say his name so that I didn't butcher it, because I think I'm worse than you are when it comes to butchering names.
Yeah, but I would say, like, that's a sick name. If it was pronounced like Trikweze, like, absolutely. Like, I don't care how it's pronounced. I love it. But Chargers go DB/special teams in round 7 and 6. Not surprised at all. Chargers didn't have to go up because of BPA, even though, like, Will Johnson fell. There's a reason, which is a ton of storylines in just the NFL circle. But, like, special teams juice, team captain, like, there's trends here that I think Chargers got with both these selections.
Yeah, for the RJ Mickens one in particular, Dan, this is not only bolstering your safety group as it stands right now, but this is a potential future move for you moving forward. And depending on whose big board you're looking at, PFF had RJ Mickens as their 103rd overall player on their big board.
BPA.
Chargers ended up getting him at 214 overall, not too shabby. In terms of zone coverage, fits exactly what Jesse Minter wants to do in that type of a defense. And he didn't just play safety either. He was sprinkled around a lot throughout his career at Clemson. He played in the slot, he played outside corner, but he was mainly in there as either a deep or a box safety. But I like his versatility, and we've always heard about Steve Klingscale wanting these guys to come in and be able to play every single position that they possibly can in the secondary, regardless if they're a corner or a safety or not. But this selection of RJ Mickens, Dan, is for the immediate future going to be direct competition for Tony Jefferson. For the future, it could end up being a move to, again, still get younger and faster at the position. And given RJ Mickens' skill set for what he provides in zone coverage, it still allows Derwin James to do the things that he needs to do and where he thrives best in putting him closer to the line.
Yeah, and he looks the part too, right? He had a 75 athleticism score, which was 6th ranked of all safeties in this class. And again, 4.4 speed, 41.5-inch vertical leap. He was the second team, I think it was honorable mention, all ACC in both 2023 and 2024. Again, there every day. Played in 10 games in 2020, played in 13 games in 2021, played in 13 games in 2022, played in 11 games in 2023, played in 13 games in 2024. Like, he's playing. He's on the field. He's consistent. Lance Zierlein had him as a round 5 grade. His father, by the way, played the NFL for 10 seasons. Sounds pretty good to me. So you give me the athletic traits. You give me Steve Klingscale and Jesse Minter to help coach this dude up. He had rave reviews by his safeties coach in Clemson. Yeah, if you got smarts and athleticism, like, I trust you to develop in this defense, bar none. And again, BPA, he was the BPA on the board. And I think he was literally the BPA on ESPN's board when it was draft time. So not really surprised there. And Jake, take us home with round 7.
Give me the name again, Dan, because I'm not saying it.
I think it's Trikweze Bridges. Don't hold me to it. Trikweze. Say it with me. Trikweze.
Trikweze Bridges.
Like 3 Quezes. Trikweze.
Trikweze Bridges.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan, this is... again, in terms of just bolstering the secondary, here you go again with Joe Hortiz making these type of moves. And for the production that he was able to put up, he really came on, I thought, towards the end of the season when you look at just his stats and his overall production. But in terms of bolstering up the secondary unit in general, when you still have a lot of question marks going into this season, with the 2 free agents you brought in, what is Jasir Taylor and Dean Leonard going to look like beyond this season? You need to keep recycling this. As Joe Hortiz talks about, you can never have enough good corners. And I think as the type of game when you watch Bridges play, it fits the mold for what Steve Klingscale and Jesse Minter want to do. So system-wise, for what they did with RJ Mickens and Bridges in this situation, I feel like they did a very, very good job. I think, if I remember correctly, in terms of where his overall ranking was, I think was around, it was right around this. So he was for everything that had him projected, it was for a 7th round / UDFA, and the Chargers ended up making it their final selection of the draft. But, admittedly, have I gotten a chance to watch of a lot of Bridges? No, I didn't. Have I watched him since the draft has ended? Yes, I have. And in that little, microcosm, whatever you want to call it, it looks like, in terms of overall scheme system fit, that's precisely what the Chargers drafted him for. And I'm sure that he's going to be able to add a little bit more juice on special teams as well.
Yeah, I think the Chargers team looked at the ceiling, looked at versatility, looked at special teams. The guy had like a 6'9" wingspan. Like, his arms are crazy long. And you think about being a gunner for the Chargers or being on defense for the Chargers and special teams. Like, yeah, checks out. Again, 7th round pick. Are you going to put all your stock in this? Like, no. But if you can try to get someone to develop, yeah, why not? Special teams, backup. Again, we talk about this is like back of the end roster competition for not just Tony Jefferson, but that special teams unit as well. And I wouldn't be shocked. He got such great reviews from his safeties coach. I wouldn't be shocked if he makes 53 just because of how intelligent he is. So There's a few different. I'm sorry, that was for Clemson. That was for RJ Mickens, not for Trikweze Bridges. This is a traits guy. This is a traits guy. You're looking at pure athletic traits, versatility, and hoping that he can come in. Like, he's got a lot to do. Again, 7th round pick, but so again, snap the line. I think after day 1, day 2, hell, you can go into day 3 into round 4. You're probably chilling at an A grade. Then I think there's question marks. Not that it's good or bad, but question marks around rounds 5 and 6, just given the trade up, losing draft capital. You lose out on the offensive line, quote unquote, starting possibilities. You then go back and get offensive line. What do you make of overall? I think we both landed on the B+, but I think it's because like they were close to an A. Like they were close to an A-, excuse me. But because of the question mark, again, it's not like their offensive line sucks, period. It's like, is their offensive line now great? I don't know. That's where I kind of brought it down a little bit, but still, B+ is damn good, dude. Like B+. So many Chargers teams would love to have or so many Chargers fans, so many other NFL teams would love to have a B+.
Yeah, I think,
go ask your Bengals fans how they feel about theirs.
They actually feel pretty good after speaking to the one in particular that was at the draft party. They feel
the only one that feels good. That's the only one that feels good.
No, in general, I concur with the B+ grade. I thought when it came to later in day 3, there were certain players that were still on the board. I thought that the Chargers were going to double dip at certain positions, especially after the 2 wide receivers going. On APR was still on the board.
That was your guy.
Aeneas Peebles was still on the board late in the round, and that was after the Chargers had executed their trade up to go and get Orande Gadsden. And now it was like, it was right in that position spot where the Chargers had 2 of their 4 6-round picks that those guys ended up going. Dorian Strong was another one that was still there on day 3 that in terms of fit for what Steve Klingscale and Jesse Minter wanted to do for their zone coverage, that was another one that I thought that would have been a direction for them to go. So overall, in terms of what the priorities were, I think the Chargers come out of this. You could honestly make a case that if you went Omarion, Hampton, Trey Harris, Jamaree Caldwell, Kennard, and Orande Gadsden, you have 5 guys immediately that could be looking to majorly contribute to this team.
100%.
And that's tough to find. And there's an argument to be made that based on those 5, that you could see a bigger impact out of them than last year's draft. Remember, even after the Joe Alt and Ladd McConkey picks, even after Ladd McConkey was selected last year, it was still perceived by many in the media that the Chargers had the worst wide receiver room, even though they drafted 3 wide receivers in that draft class last year, which was wild. And then, thankfully for you and all of us, they ended up getting the Tar Heel Still and Cam Hart selections really bump up out of that draft and made it look really good. But if you look at this as a whole, for those 5 players in particularly, there is a lot of potential for immediate impact from that group.
Yeah, and I think this is what I kind of simmered on this for a bit, because I was trying to process just like how I would compare and contrast this to last year, and how it made me feel down in my bones, right? Like, to me, this one felt like it had some sizzle, because I think you got like the pass catchers, you got some weapons that Chargers fans would be really excited about. But you also got, in my opinion, like things that improve areas that you were really, really crippled by in years past that may be a little underrated. Like this year, it was clear that they leaned heavy into their everyday thing, and they leaned heavy into the health of these players. And you look, and as they went through and started making their selections, I'm like, Omarion Hampton, like, okay, check. Trey Harris, check. Jamaree Caldwell, check. You just go down the list of dudes, even down to the end of them. Like 6-round, 7-round picks are getting the 35, 40 straight starts or playing time in games. So that was a big moment for me. And I think I was kind of thinking about like impact on this Chargers team. Like Jamaree Caldwell is going to impact this Chargers team. We thought Junior Colston was last year, and I think he would have if he wasn't injured and had kind of a setback throughout the season. Ladd McConkey, dude. Joe Alt, dude. And then we didn't know about those 5th round picks until after the fact, but holy shit, like those guys hit home runs. And so this year, I mean, it's a hard draft to follow last year's because the Chargers were nailing it. But this one has the potential. I agree with you, Jake. Like, I was going to ask you, I'm just curious, who is your Chargers 5th round selections of last year this year? You got Tarheeb Still, Cam Hart. Doesn't necessarily have to be secondary, but just like the guys that you were like, whoa, and maybe more Tarheeb Still, honestly, because I think Cam Hart was on high on a lot of people's draft boards, but Tarheeb Still specifically.
I mean, if you're the easy one to go to is if you're just talking round for round, it's obviously the Gadsden for the 5th round pick. Getting an athletic tight end like that, where the Chargers got him, and given how the board had fallen to them in the previous rounds, they still ended up coming away with a guy who you could see getting starter snaps very, very early for them, for a guy who was selected in the 5th round. For me, Dan, I'm actually going to go out and say it's Kyle Kennard. I'm going to say it's Kyle Kennard.
It's a good one.
I think he starts as your, rotational edge. You can call it edge 3, edge 4, however you want to position it right now. But as the year progresses, I think you're going to see a lot more out of Kyle Kennard when it comes to what he brings to the table, his ability to get after the quarterback, the speed and power combo that he possesses. And when you pair him with the likes of Thule and Khalil Mack in the same room, I think there's a lot for him to learn. But as the season goes on, you're going to see a lot out of Kyle Kennard.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's a sleeper pick for sure. I think Jamaree Caldwell is also a sleeper pick. I think a lot of people may have just stopped at 2024 and not looked beyond that. And we're like, whoa, dude, didn't have a sack. Like, what's up with this? Like, that was a reach. But I don't know, man. Do your homework. These guys did their homework. And so that's a good one. Like, to your larger point, like the production potential of this Chargers team with this draft class is pretty good. And what I think Chargers fans are kind of forgetting sometimes is they finally are starting to get legit depth at key positions. I mean, they got at least 10 receivers on their roster right now?
Remember when we said this at this point in the year last year to say, okay, the Chargers need to stop signing wide receivers. All of a sudden they have too many, but we don't know how any of them are going to end up playing out. I think we have a better idea now.
Yeah, last year felt like it was a bunch of darts from 100 yards away, right? Like you're just chucking them, hoping they hit the board. Whereas now, like you're 4 or 5 feet away thinking, all right, I can at least get on the board, right? Like we're hitting doubles. And that was the other theme was, there were some players that this Chargers team drafted. Like I think Omarion Hampton could be an absolute grand slam home run selection, like home run. And the floor for him is so high for me. Trey Harris, I think could easily be a double. I'm not sure he'd be a home run. Like, I don't know if he's going to be a perennial all-pro type thing, but like double, in my opinion. And it fits a specific need the Chargers team has. Same with Jamaree Caldwell. I think that is a double. I think you look at Kyle Kennard, double probably to start, especially for value, but can go higher. Orande Gadsden, to me, like that could be a home run. It could also be like a single, but like there's a lot of dudes where it's just like, all right, you know what? These guys are going to produce. Like they're going to be amicable on this Chargers team. And like there aren't any more like boom or bust selections, right? Like how many pure bust selections do you think there are here right now? And that's hard to say in the moment, but like I find it hard to believe that any one of the top 5 rounds would be bust. Like Lambert-Smith to me is probably the first one where I'm like, well, I don't know. I get why they drafted him, but like that's the one. Again, I'm no GM, but for the most part, like you felt pretty safe. Like, these are pretty safe bets.
It's going to be interesting, Dan, for sure. It's there's a lot of excitement, and rightfully so, around this class, and just given the reasons that you had talked about. It's not necessarily drafting for potential because there are impact players that are going to step in immediately. I think it's how many can you potentially find? And in drafts, coming away with 2 to 3 is a win. Last year, the Chargers came up with 4. Their first 2 picks and 2 in the 5th round. What are you going to find? And essentially, even I'm glad you brought up the Junior Colson aspect of it, because he essentially redshirted his first year with the injuries that he took. Imagine what that's going to be. It's almost like the Chargers didn't necessarily have a 3rd round pick go out and produce last year. So we still have to keep that in context. But the potential that you have to impact the team, especially when it comes to offense, which is where you were lacking last year, it's huge. And side note, I'm not going to forget a 3rd time in saying this because I've already missed 2 opportunities in checking myself. I said the Orande Gadsden catch was against Florida State. No, it was against Boston College. So I apologize. I meant to bring it up like 2 more times, and then I'm like, shit, I forgot to say that again.
It was the East Coast team. That's what matters.
Apologies.
Jeez. Hang it up, Jake. Hang it up.
Gotta quit.
I think that the part that was a little like rewarding, I think, and this is probably the case for most Chargers fans, or many of them, is it feels like we're in a much closer alignment this year with what Chargers fans and folks covering the team generally are wanting for this Chargers team, and like what this front office and coaching staff prioritize as well. And so it was cool to see trends of, yeah, that's a BPA. I get it. Like, all right, like that really isn't a reach. Like, okay, cool. I get it.
Well, it's because you now have a GM who is transparent, Dan. Why is it that everybody knows that when the Eagles pick, no matter where they pick, they're going to end up getting a stud? It's because they always do, and they have a proven track record of doing so. And from Joe Hortiz coming over from Baltimore, the way that they still are doing their track record, and even with Joe Hortiz gone, they're still drafting the way that Ozzie Newsome was drafting, and many people before them were drafting. It's just different when you have a transparent GM that comes and tells you what he's going to do. He goes out and does it, talks about priorities, talks about his wins, talk about his failures and where they need to buff it up, and he's true to his word. So once again, if we all individually, anybody watching, has our own big boards, has our players ranked, has our favorites, of course, that's always going to happen. And we will always have them stack ranked in a much different order than what the Chargers have in their war room. But overall, the mission, BPA goal, supporting Justin Herbert, still continuing to build up depth and getting impact players with production on both sides of the ball, you did it.
And again, like, they're not off the hook, right? Like, I think there's still TBD on, a left guard position, in my opinion. And that could easily get changed. We saw so many free agency moves happening after the draft last year. We don't get into it, but like, there's a bunch. And so can this Chargers team be where everybody wants, in the next month? Like, totally. But, you can't do everything in 1 or 2 years. And I mean, you just got a stalwart in Joe Alt just a year ago. I mean, you got a ton of draft capital invested in the offensive line. You go out and you bring in Mekhi Becton, who is an absolute beast. Asterisk if when healthy. He's 2 years removed from an injury now. So, like, you feel pretty good about it. You've got Rashawn Slater already. You've got Will Dissly, who is a balling tight end. You now have a wrecking ball running back tandem for Justin Herbert. Like, there's a lot more relief for Justin Herbert now, to where, like, they don't necessarily have to have an A+ offensive line. And that was the only thing I guess I would probably push back a little bit. Like, could the offensive line be better? Of course. And honestly, you could argue the offensive line could always be better. But do they need to have like an A+ offensive line for this Chargers fan base or for this Chargers team to be ready to compete for Super Bowl? I don't think so. Like, that's the benefit of having a ball-in quarterback with weapons now. If you don't have to have all 5 studs in order for you to win, like, would it be great? Sure. But insert a blocking running back, insert a blocking tight end, insert more weapons to where Justin Herbert could get rid of the ball faster to open guys. Like, there are many ways to play this. And so, like, if your bar is their offensive line top 2 in the league, like, good luck, man. Like, that's a hard thing to do, and it takes time. But is it adequate enough? Or is it above average to pretty darn good? Yeah, I think so. So this is the year that I think everybody kind of had pegged for Chargers to kind of make that jump. And I think they did. And I really do. And you look at it in holistic, right? Like, look at what they did in the offseason to prepare for the NFL draft to where they could go BPA. Like, you bring in a Tyler Conklin. You bring in all of the supporting cast on the defensive line, secondary. You bring in Najee Harris as like a bell cow by himself, even if they didn't go running back. They bring in Mike Williams. There's a bunch of things that they did that enabled them to do what they did this weekend. And so overall, again, B+ is damn good. B+, you'll take that. If you can get a B+ draft every year, you are in contention. How many times did we talk about drafts grades in the past that were even close to that? You may have thought they were up front, and then you look back, you're like, well, that shit sucked. So I think you got to give kudos to Joe Hortiz, kudos to Jim Harbaugh. I think they stuck to their plan, stuck to their board, their BPA. It's also kind of fun for us, Jake, as we went through and was watching the NFL draft in larger schemes. How many of the guys that we loved went to the teams that are just like, of course.
Man, I'm glad you brought that up, because the AFC West in general,
dude,
holy shit. It just felt like they were in a war room competition with each other throughout at least 80% of the draft, because you're seeing Kansas City get the guy that they want. Ashton Gelati. I wasn't even in the room, and I heard his name called, and I knew that the Chargers were not on the clock. So you just heard me yell out an audible no, and then I come down and I see that he went to Kansas City, and I was even more pissed off about it. The Denver Broncos, I thought, just absolutely dominated it as it relates to the draft. And then the Raiders, holy shit.
They did great.
You start off with Ashton Genty as your first-round pick, and the picks that followed for them, what they were able to get in terms of impact weapons offensively. The AFC West just went bonkers. They were trading punches throughout the entirety of the draft process. And of course they are, because of all 4 of the head coaches that they have currently on their team. So they're trying to build ass kickers. They're trying to build impact, defenses and offensives and this, that, and the other. And of course you still have the damn Patrick Mahomes in your division that you still have to contend with. And a lot of these
Jalen Royals, by the way.
Don't even bring it up. I don't need to remind myself of that. I was even I texted Dan because I said, Kansas City is going to get Jalen Royals here at this pick, aren't they? And this was like 10 picks beforehand.
I got received.
Sure enough. It's just, who cares about receivers in the first 2 rounds? We'll just pick them up in the 4th. Who cares? Ugh. But yeah, AFC West was basically just having a draft war within their own division, as if it was like a real fight. It's like,
it got like a heavyweight fight.
Yeah, it's like, you got him, son of a bitch. All right, we need to go out and get this guy. Pow! What do you think? Oh, we're gonna come back over the top. Let's get you a low blow in there, you bastard.
Dude, running backs alone, RJ Harvey, Omarion, Hampton, and Ashton Genty added in one draft to that division.
I said to Dan, collectively, we at our draft party, we had one Raiders fan who was ecstatic about the Ashton Genty selection. And, we're saying amongst ourselves, like, son of a bitch, we got to play that twice a year. The Omarion and Hampton selection really took that sting away very quickly. But you come back around to day 2, one of my personal favorite running backs, and RJ Harvey goes to Denver. I'm like, son of a bitch. Like, the AFC West is going to be a murderer's row of competition. Kansas City may still come away with being the divisional champs, but it damn sure ain't going to be as easy as it was previous years for them.
Yeah, and I think, kind of moving forward, the Chargers team is not done. They're still free agents, and Chargers went out and got a bunch of UDFAs as well. We'll talk about kind of the free agent possibilities here on a later episode, but I haven't got to all the UDFAs. Honestly, Jake, I was tired and I was spent and I needed some like vegetables in my life.
Vegetables.
So I didn't necessarily get to the UDFAs, but I will say Rocket Sanders, that dude was my favorite of all of them just when I saw all the names go through. What are your thoughts on any early impressions on the UDFAs? Any that you can see like, oh, dude, he can make the roster? Like any guys that were high on your list?
Yeah, I mean, Rocket Sanders was running back that we had talked about a lot, rightfully so, given his production. There were a couple actually that you were surprised that didn't end up getting drafted. It's because it speaks to how deep this running back class was. But I love the fact that they did not stay pat with just the Omarion Hampton selection. And now all of a sudden your running back room has a shit ton of competition in it with a lot of potential and a lot of different skill set variables, whether you're talking about, pound the rock or explosiveness or someone who can catch the ball out of the backfield. There's a lot there. And I thought with them selecting Rocket Sanders where they did in the undrafted free agent pool was a great get for them. Dan, the only other notable one for me, and again, like you, I have not gotten a chance to watch a good majority of the undrafted free agent class, but I go again with how does it fit? Where is their competition? Where is their potential? And that's Nico Reed out of Oregon. And I think when you look at, again, the variables in place for much like the RJ Mickens and Bridges pick, he's got versatility to his game, and his coverage grades were fantastic. So is that going to be potential in terms of not only special teams contribution, but it's going to fit right in Jesse Minter's defense for what he wants to do. So I'm excited to see how he's going to come out during training camp. But as of right now, those ones are the two biggest ones, A, that I've watched, and B, that really stand out to me. We'll get to more of those as we get a chance to kind of unwind after the draft and get a little bit more time to spend watching some game film on them that we had not gotten to previously.
Cool. I want to kind of just take a 30,000 foot view here for a second. I went back and looked at NFL.com and I went to like their pre-draft analysis of this Chargers team and kind of what they felt was most important. And this is by Dan Parr. Top needs were tight end, wide receiver, defensive line, running back, and edge. And little snippet they said was using the draft capital to inject a jolt or a few jolts of offensive firepower would make plenty of sense for a Chargers team that was held to just 17 points or fewer 17 times, including the playoffs. The signing of running back Najee Harris and Mike Williams, receiver, are not nearly enough. Then on defense, the Bolts should be looking to add competition on the interior and off the edge. It wouldn't surprise me to see them bolster the interior offensive line either. I mean, if there's not direct targeted missile strikes on every single one of those, I think you did it. Like you nailed.
Read me those 5 positions again.
Tight end.
Rondé Gadsden.
Wide receiver.
Trey Harris. Lambert-Smith.
Defensive line.
Jamaree Caldwell.
Running back.
Omarion Hampton.
Edge.
Kennard. The 5/6 positions that we said that could have immediate impact for the Chargers. Crazy.
Yeah. And again, like the Gadsden one is so fun. I freaking love that one. We'll have to talk to him. Jake, anything else? I mean, we went a little long here today, but this is a lot of fun. Maybe the last question I'll ask you. Coupling free agency with the draft. Again, there's still free agency left, but coupling the two, they had a ton of money. They had a ton of holes. They had a ton of draft picks. You saw what they did in free agency. Fast forward to the B+ haul. If you combine the two, are you satisfied?
Yeah, I am. And I will admit I was surprised given how they chose to spend the free agency money that they had, as opposed to the previous regime, how they chose to spend that money the last time that the Chargers had that much.
Pleasantly surprised.
But when you look at how those strategic free agency moves set them up for this draft class.
Yeah.
How can you be mad at that? Really? Remember the exercise that I told everybody to remember, that after the Omarion Hampton pick, look at who the Chargers pair with that first round pick in rounds 2 and round 3, much like the Joe Alt and Ladd McConkey pairing from a year ago. I think given how the board fell, the Chargers worked it very, very well. And it was a great, great pairing. Now, you could come up with arguments to say, oh, if they went, there was a contingent of people that thought that the Chargers still should have gone Matthew Golden at 22, and you could pair him with a running back later or a defensive tackle later, and you can come up with every combination that you want. But in terms of how the board fell to them, in terms of value and immediate impact and fit, I think that they handled this extremely well, both in free agency and the draft.
Yeah, again, like the one position group that, I mean, sure, would you have liked to have added 3 interior offensive linemen to just go crazy? Sure, you could, but like they added multiple. They added Mekhi Becton, who immediately, fills that position. They added a ton of depth in other positions to where they can go out and sign other players at key positions. They can get game changers, right? Like if guard is the only hole that they left that as a question mark, not like an exclamation question mark, but just a question mark, but they also added beef to that, like you'll take it. You can't get everything, and you can't go from a bottom of the NFL roster to a Super Bowl contender, right? Like in a year or year and a half, you want to call it, 2 free agent classes and drafts. Like it takes time, and they're building that bully that they talked about. And I think what I saw this year, Jake, in free agency and the draft, is they had money and resources far more than the year prior to go out and get like their dudes, like their kinds of guys, both in free agency and the draft. Like they didn't have to take many gambles this year because they had money to spend. Like last year, we're talking about these like 1-year deals that were just like, again, darts from 100 yards away. You're just chucking them, hoping that they can hit the board. And luckily they did. Whereas now, like you're getting proven production and talent throughout the draft, and you're getting availability and durability throughout free agency. So you gotta feel good about what they're doing. Could it have been better? Maybe, but like, come on, like we are not beggars cannot be choosers here. Like it just, let's give some credit here. That was a pretty damn good draft and pretty damn good offseason that's not done yet. And yeah, I would give it, I'm kind of tipping on the B+, A-, both sides. Like I can go either way. I go B+ to be a little more conservative, but I could be talked to an A- for overall. Like, remember, they had like 20-something holes to fill this year, or 20-something free agents that went away. So I'm happy. I hope Chargers fans are happy. This was a fun year, a pivotal year for this Chargers team. We're getting into a ton. We'll get more into kind of those macro, micro breakdowns. We'll get into some of the voicemails from folks that had reactions to this NFL draft. We'll talk about some UDFAs. We'll try to get some players on here to kind of discuss their excitement with us and our excitement with them. Are we done? Are we getting coffee? Energy drinks?
I already had it today.
Okay.
So next time we do a live show, however, there's going to be a lot of energy in there, and I will need some extra energy to boost in that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. This was so much fun, Jake. Pleasure doing business with you, sir. This is another year in the books. Arguably my favorite NFL draft experience, I would say.
We can start talking about the 2026 prospects, right?
Oh, this freaking guy, man. You want to call you shot?
No. No, I'm kidding. I put up a tweet yesterday, if anybody saw it, about Jake Slaughter just giving the situation between Andre Johnson and Zion, or excuse me, Andre James and Zion Johnson as it currently stands right now for the center position. And Jake Slaughter, who I thought was one of the most consistent centers in all of FBS this year in terms of pass blocking and run blocking, he ended up returning to the Florida Gators this year, and which, of course, just was another cog that turned this entire center class upside down in terms of who was originally projected to be there. Next year's center class is going to be pretty damn good. And Jake Slaughter might be the first center taken if everything works out for this upcoming season. There you go. There's the initial early shot.
Does that feel good?
Most likely, I will probably give a few more because I'm not going to go this long, Dan, even permission or not, to not start talking about the future. Try to stop me.
Chargers fans, let's collectively pour one out for the NFL draft chime for 2025. That was fun. Chargers fans, we got through it. Excited to see how this thing shapes out. We'll be here every step of the way. For Jake, I'm Dan. This is Chargers Unleashed, and we will talk to you next time. Have a great week, and congratulations to Chargers fans and the Chargers for the 2025 NFL Draft Haul. See you later. Bye.